close enough?
I've got it timed.
You got it on time?
Yep.
All right, if I can have your attention, we're going to go ahead and call the Scott County Board of Adjustments to order at close enough to 5 o'clock. Charlie's got it at 5, so we're going with that. If you plan to speak today, if you can stand, please, and Charlie will swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm the statements you're to make this evening to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Thank you all.
We've got we'll try to go through this as efficiently as possible this evening, but there's quite a few on here, so it's going to take some time. We do have some old applications listed that have been postponed. I think 2021-19 is postponed until November, I believe.
I think that's just 1 month, right?
Yeah, November. And then 2021-29 has been postponed until December.
Yeah, you might, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Vice Chairman, the first one you mentioned, 19, is Four Seasons All Outdoors. That was on Lyle Road. That's postponed until next month. The second one is AFIX. That's on 62, near the railroad tracks, almost to Woodford County, as a matter of fact. But that's one that's postponed until December. All
right, so Four Seasons is November, AFIX is December. Other than that, we'll continue on. We do need to look at the minutes from the last meeting.
If I can ask one thing before I forget, I'm just going to call you Mr. Chairman, if that's all right.
All right, we'll go with that.
The AFIX application, that's actually a current application, that's also to December, is it not?
Yes, both of them are.
Okay, that's G, next to the last one. That's also to December. Okay, now, I believe that's it.
All right, so good for you all. The list just got a whole lot shorter. All right, we'll go over the minutes from the last session. If you all can read through those minutes, and then we'll entertain a motion on those.
I have read those prior to the meeting, and I'll make the motion to approve the September the 2nd, 2021 minutes.
Motion has been made by Janet Holland. Need a second?
Second.
Rachel seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
There are no noes. Motion carries. All right, we'll entertain the first application, S-2021-33. Elise?
This application is for 1030 Galloway Road. It's a variance of the side yard setback from 50 feet to 23 feet, and the rear yard setback from 50 feet to 2.6 feet for reconstruction of a barn. The zone for the property is A1, agricultural district, and there's about 5.6 acres on the property. Staff does recommend approval of this variance application. This is a satellite image of the property. You can see the gray lines are drainage lines, and the green lines surrounding are all the other parcels. The property, or the item of interest, is the small barn on the southeast portion of the property, kind of in the very far back. The barn did burn down very recently, and the applicant is looking to reconstruct a new barn on the existing footprint of the previous barn. This is the topographical layout of the property. So as you can see, there are 2 sinkholes in the property in the front and kind of the middle right behind the house on the property. So those are not areas of non-building or recommended non-building. And the area circled in red is the past location and proposed placement. So you can see that it's a little bit flatter than the other portions, such as the western portion of the property, and the center of the property already has a house on it. So it's kind of appears to be the best location for it. The staff does find that the project site does have that topographical challenge that would make it extremely costly and difficult to build anywhere else on the property. And the variance would not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding properties, given that it's been there for at least 20 years prior to today. And as a result, it does meet the findings of KRS 100. So given that, the staff does recommend approval of the variance application to reduce the front side yard setback from 50 feet to 23 feet and the rear yard from 50 feet to 2.6 feet, given the 3 conditions above.
Okay. Any questions for Elise from the board?
Any calls or concerns from surrounding neighbors?
I did get a call about just the proximity to fence line to make sure that it wasn't going to encroach on neighbors' property, and given that it is a little bit tight in the rear property line, I believe to my understanding that it would not be obviously on it and that nothing would encroach on that besides just the variance or the allowed space. But I believe the applicant can also speak on their behalf if they are present or otherwise on that.
Is the applicant here?
Yes,
Would you like to speak?
not really.
I don't blame you.
This is my neighbor that I'm closest to.
Okay. Well, before I get to the neighbors, any questions for the applicant? None? All right. Would any of the neighbors like to speak?
If you could approach the podium so we can get everyone's name and address.
Want me to say anything?
It's up to you. Will you state your name, please?
Annetta Scott.
All right.
Oh, I didn't recognize you with the mask either.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Scott, or Ms. Scott, anything you would like to tell us?
I have no questions. I just hope you all will approve it. That's my neighbor. It is in the back of my farm, all the way back, you know, and it is perfectly okay with me for him to put back whatever he had or what he wants to build.
All right. All right.
That's all I have to say.
We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
There is no way you're rated 40 years old.
Janet's 91. I'm just kidding.
So you go out that window.
Yeah, tell you about that window. Anybody else like to speak upon this application? Yeah, we're gonna move this over here now. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll try to make this motion. I move that we approve application number S-2021-33, the William Bedford Senior application, and to go along with the staff recommendations.
Motion has been made by Ms. Janet. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Rachel. Any other questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. S-2021-33 carries. You all are welcome to stay with us if you'd like, or you can leave. It's up to you all.
Yes,
Thank you all.
I'll send letters out to you guys saying this is the follow-up, this is our results. You can keep that and kind of distribute it as you need to, the building permits and everything.
Thank you. We'll move on to S-2021-34. Elise?
This application is at the project site 172 Gunnell Road. It is currently owned by Living Waters Fellowship, and they are looking for a conditional use permit to operate a child care program out of the existing structure. The zoning district is A1, and the acreage of the property is approximately 5.6 acres. Staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit. On the screen is the aerial shot of the property right now. It has the main church structure in the parking lot as well as a pond in the backyard. It's a very flat part of the county, so there's obviously room to grow, but that's not what is in question right now. Section 4.12F lists churches, libraries, schools, hospitals, institutions as clubs as a conditional use in the A1 district. The supporting materials from the applicant mentioned that they're looking to use their facilities in addition to its current function as a child care program. The child care program is intended to operate from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and will have approximately 15 to 20 children enrolled with 3 to 5 employees in the property during the hours of operation. Given that peak hours of traffic are 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m., staff calculated the traffic anticipated on Gunnell Road, which is the main access path to the site. They determined that 25 maximum one-way trips in the 2 hours of peak traffic in the morning and 25 one-way trips in the evening would be the expected traffic load, which is well below the rate which would require traffic study or any kind of significant concern. However, if neighbors have concerns about it, they are welcome to voice it. I didn't hear anything on that one. If the applicant does intend to develop the site further, such as adding another structure or an addition to the property greater than 10% of the existing building square footage, there would need to be a preliminary design plan submitted. However, there is not one at this time. There was a neighborhood comment about the conditional use permit voicing concerns about child safety. As you can see, the property doesn't have any kind of containment. There's no fencing around the property line. And Gunnell Road, while not a major arterial road, is a road that has a lot of subdivisions and a lot of properties off of it, as well as working farms. So a lot of concerns were coming to children getting out or something happening and a child kind of running into a farm area or an active work zone and getting injured and threatening not only their safety, but the well-being and the economic capacity of the surrounding neighbors. So as a result, the staff does recommend that a fenced-in area for children designated for their use during the hours of operation be installed on the property. That would not require any development plan. That would just involve contacting a local manufacturer and getting a appropriately sized fenced and height fence for the property. All in all, the findings are kind of above, and the application would not adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare of the surrounding residents, again, given that they are held to the conditions of approval applied, and they would not change the character of the surrounding area because they are not adding any structures. Staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit subject to the 5 points above. The first 4 are the typical ones that are seen in the conditional use permit, such as adhering to all other zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, and complying with all regulations from the federal, state, and local regulatory entities, especially business-related certifications, licenses, permits, and recertifications for childhood safety. And the 5th point that staff has added is to construct a fenced-in area outside of the main structure should the child care program have any activities or operations outside that would ensure child safety and prevent any kind of concerns or stressors added to the surrounding property owners or parents enrolling their children in the program.
Okay, any questions for Elise from the board? All right, is the applicant here or represent? If you want to step forward and tell us your name, please.
Darrell Gaunts. First thing I'd like to say is we have more property than what you've got there because we've acquired everything below the pond as well. So everything on this side of the creek is ours. We are building fences around all the play structures where the children will be exiting outside. It's all fenced. You have to do that by state requirements anyway. So that's going to be done immediately. So that's going to be taken care of. And then other than that, they're not going to be subject to anything because we're going to have people there watching. Okay?
Right.
So we'll see to it that that's taken care of, and that's all we've got to say.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? All right. All right, thank you. Anybody like to speak on this? State your name, please.
I'm Sarah Henry.
Okay.
Since I've driven over here from Lexington, I have to say something. I was concerned, I own the, by virtue of my husband's purchasing the adjoining property many years ago. I'm now the owner. The land that we own that adjoins this property is now, there's a crop being raised by a tenant, and I hope that that will continue. My concern, I think it's already been addressed, was that there be a fence between my property and the daycare center, and I'm sure the state regulations for licensure would guarantee that too. I do have liability insurance by virtue of Farm Bureau, and I really don't have any objection. My concern, I believe, has been addressed tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on this? All right, if not, we'll entertain a motion, and I'll go ahead and make the motion for S-2021-34 to a conditional use permit to operate a child care center, taking into account the staff recommendations. So I'll make the motion, but we'll need a second.
I'll second.
Janet seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Like I said before, you're welcome to join us for the rest of this, but you know, more than happy to leave too. Yeah, all right, I understand. Completely understand. All right, next application is S-2021-35. Elise?
Up and down.
Getting your steps in?
Just bouncing back and forth. This application is for a conditional use permit at 3394 Cincinnati Road, requesting a secondary single-family residence on the property. It is in the A1 zoning district and has an acreage of approximately 39 acres. Staff does recommend approval of this conditional use permit. On the screen is the aerial shot of the property. The screen does not show a house addition that was included as part of a variance request for condition. It was a variance request for the side yard setback due to the significant front yard setback because there's a creek kind of running parallel to Cincinnati Road. The variance was approved in August of 2019 to add that house. It was a side yard variance that would only apply for that home. So here's kind of a more explained situation of what's going on. The existing home is noted north of the existing barn, and the proposed location is in the red circle there, kind of at the fork between the trees in that property. It is permitted by a conditional use for having a secondary dwelling as long as it is for a farm worker or a family member, and so this would comply. And it would also adhere to that significant build lines of 225 feet, which is way more than our usual allowance for it. So it is placed outside of that area, so it would be in compliance with that. These are our findings for it. It would not adversely affect the public health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding residences, as well as it would be permitted by conditional use approval. Staff does recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. The first four, again, are the traditional ones that we apply, such as adhering to zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, complying with all federal, state, and local regulations, and the null and void clause, where if you do move, it would become null and void. Unfortunately, that would not result in the house going down. It just would be, okay, this was a conditional use approved in the previous tenant. Any changes to the conditional use or the approved conditions would need to return to the board, and then the second two are just general stipulations that we attach to family dwellings, such as having at least 100 feet from the current residences, should the resident decide to subdivide the property, as well as there is an option for a free of cost address for the dwelling. It is highly recommended, if not mandatory, that you have an address on this. So the JS department and our team can help with that process when the need arises.
All right, any questions from the board for Elise? All right, is the
No.
applicant, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, no neighbor concerns? Or
I haven't
calls or-
heard any concern about it. Most
Okay.
people are, it's a large enough property. I don't think it's close enough to anyone else that they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do this to me. So I haven't heard anything about that.
Is the applicant here? Would you like to speak? Anything you want to add? Okay, all right. Any questions from anybody else? If you'll come to the podium and state your name, please.
My name's Carl Satterley. If you could by any chance put up that map again. I live at 605 Wood Duck Lane, which is basically that last square. My concern is this, that's not a second resident, that is a third or fourth resident. I woke up one morning to a massive fire at the bottom of that hill. And just like she said, no one is concerned because it's not close to anybody. They built a house right off my deck at the bottom of that hill. And I did not receive a letter. I did not receive anything. I believe it's her son. I have no problem with that. It's her property. But I would have liked an opportunity to speak, because the reason I bought that land is because I am surrounded by agriculture. By no means did I want a house out of my back door. So my concern, like I said, there's another house that's not even on here. They're going to build another house, that makes 3. Plus they've got living quarters in the barn. And their son has come and told me, I can't do this, I can't hunt, I can't do this. I got news for them. I was there long before they do, and I hunt. Now, if they chose to build that house at the bottom of my hill, that's on them. And like I said, there was not a meeting like this. And that's my concern. Where it's at, I don't have a problem with, but that is not the second residence, that's the third. So that's my concern is they keep building that up. Also, the other neighbors have concerns, but it's fall break. They're all out of town. They couldn't be here. But they are, the house that was built was right off the back of the Mallard Point houses. They've got all that land out front. I don't know why they had to build right behind the Mallard Point houses.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Satterley?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. If we can have you sit down, and we're going to ask the applicant to come forward, if you will, please.
Hi, my name is Susan Adams. First of all, there is no house built at the bottom of the hill. There's no structure built. There's not any structure at all that's been put up at the bottom of his hill. And Mr. Satterley, I'm sorry that you're confused on that. There is a big area where we were cutting down some trees, and we piled up some trees back there, but it is not a structure. There is no structure on that property except my house, which is on the map behind the barn there.
Right.
And then our barn, I'm not really sure what he means by living quarters. That barn has never been lived in. I wouldn't put my worst enemy to live in that barn. We are trying to do some remodeling on the barn, but that barn has never, when I bought the property, had anyone stay in that barn. I'm not real sure where he got that information. But like I said, there is no other property, structure. There's not even a doghouse down there. There is no structure. I think the confusion might be my son originally wanted to build a house down there because he went in and he cleared it out, and it is so pretty down there. And it's way down there. I guess when you live, Mr. Satterley, is that first block?
Yes, right at the bottom of the hill.
It's way down there at the bottom. I can't see his house when I'm down there. Like, I can't see any of the houses on Wood Duck when I'm down in the bottom. But I think the confusion is that my son wanted to build down there, but it was like in a floodplain. It was always flooded. It was always wet down there. And there's a lot of, like, what I call sinkholes, but I don't know what they are. They're little holes down there. And I was like, oh, this isn't safe. So he decided to move it over up on the hill, away from the rain and the floods. And as Elise said, we have that big setback. One of the reasons why I built where I built is because there's not very many good building places on this property. It's almost like 39 acres to do what with? Well, nothing really, except out front we do have some paddock areas. But again, there's no other structure on my property except my home and that barn and the place that we chose to build the house, that we want to build a house on top. I can't see any homes on Wood Duck from there. I don't think they're going to be able to see his house from there because of the trees and the location that it's at. And I would like to apologize to Mr. Satterley for my son. If he was rude to you, I would like to apologize for that. And I don't know where you're talking about, where you hunt.
Out on my back porch.
Okay, well, that's
And
your
like
right.
I said, he told me several times he was building that house there, and when he had that big fire, we didn't know what it was. So I ran down there because he cut that road all the way back there. He's like, yeah, I'm cutting the road, I'm building my house right here.
Well, he wanted to, that was like last year.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of investigating and research and decided that was not a safe place, for him to build his home. So we changed it so that we could move it closer to the front towards the Cincinnati Road area. Because really deep down, we do try to stay away from the Wood Duck area. I don't even go back there. I go back there to mow. I mow it almost every day. But like I said, I can't even see your house when I mow. I can't see any of the homes when I'm mowing. So I would like to, again, ask permission that my son can build a house there. And if you would like to, Mr. Satterley, I would love for you to come down there, and I can show you that there's no structures down there at all.
Well, like I said, when he was burning all that out, and then for the next several days, we heard construction. I said, am I gonna see your house? No, not when the leaves are on, but when the leaves are off, you definitely will. And you can't hunt off your porch, because my yard's gonna be right there.
No, sir, that is not correct. and I own the property, and I'm telling you that, you know,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
mentioned, yeah.
And I'm sorry for where the condition, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if he didn't build there, that's fine, that's a beautiful spot you're building, and like I said, I have no problem
Did you
with
go
that.
down there?
But like I said, I was
Did you
under the
see it?
impression
Did
he
you go
built
down
that
there?
house there already.
Oh, no, sir, I'm sorry, no, sir. And again, if you would like to come down there, I would be more than happy for you to come down there and see the area where you know, to confirm that there's no home down there.
Like I said, I haven't walked down there since he threatened me about trespassing.
Well, and I want to mention that, we have a lot of trespassers on our property from the Mallard Point, and we have put in their homeowners association paper, well, we didn't do it. One of the neighbors took it upon herself to put it in the homeowners association newsletter or something that we didn't want trespassers because of the safety reasons. We found 5 or 6 deer stands on our property where people up in the trees hunting there, and we posted no hunting, and then we put trail cams up, and we saw people all over our property, even riding their ATVs. And I found out when I bought the property that a young little boy, I can't hardly talk about it, but he had been killed on our property years ago, and he was on an ATV. And it scared me to death. And when we found out, we saw on our trail cams that people were on the ATVs back there, it upset us, you know. And I think that girl I was talking to from the Mallard Point, she put it in the homeowners association that we didn't want trespassers. And if it came across rude, you know, I apologize. I didn't ask her to do it. She did it on her own. But that's why, another reason why we don't want anyone on our property hunting.
Oh, no, I
But
understand.
I apologize to you 100%, because if you're hunting off the back of your porch, that's your property. We can't tell you what to do.
And part of the, I won't say confusion, but part of the issue is when Mark had control of that whole area, there were several of us that hunted that whole area.
Yes, sir.
And then it was sold at auction a couple Novembers ago. And those, a lot of people didn't know that, and they were still trespassing on your property.
Oh, yes,
And like I said, I understand you were running them out, but he didn't have any reason to be rude to
sir.
me.
No, sir. No, sir.
But he was rather rude to me, so.
Yes, sir, and I apologize wholeheartedly. I'm so sorry. And again, I would love to take you down there and show you that there is no structure, not even a dog.
Well, I'll see it in a month or two when the leaves fall.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to grab a hold of a couple of things here before we get too far, pardon the pun, into the weeds. But if she is proposing to build in that red circle, Mr. Satterley, that's what we're looking at this point. You know, all the other discussions about the property behind, I think you guys can work out whether he visits or
No,
whatever
that's,
the
I know
case
that
may be.
area, like I said, I've hunted that whole property. That is a beautiful spot. No one in Mallard Point subdivision will even be able to see that house. I would have built my primary house. That's beautiful.
All
I
right.
have no problem with that.
All right, so you're happy now.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're good. All right. Any questions for Ms. Adams from the board?
No, I'm not good at talking.
Okay, no, you did well. We did good. All right, I think we got through that. Anybody else want to speak on this application? All right, if not, any questions from the board before I go on? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve conditional use permit application S-22135 for a secondary single-family home with the conditions set out by staff.
All right, motion has been made by Rachel. We'll need a second.
I'll second.
Janet seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Congratulations. You can stay with us if you'd like, or you can, you know. All right,
You haven't interested anybody yet.
I have not.
Are you
We're
taking,
trying to leave.
are you taking a message from that?
Yes, we are. All right, next application is S-2021-36. Elise?
I hit it too early. This is an application at 481 Sims Pike, a conditional use application for a home occupation top rate of farm to table business. This is submitted by the soon-to-be owner. The property is yet to be subdivided, but they're that's why we're recommending the postponement. It is in the A1 district, and it is approximately 5 acres of property. So this is the large tract that this property would be pulled from, and we very recently received the survey from the surveyor cutting this portion out. It's roughly outlined to that shape that is kind of slightly zoomed in for clarity's sake. This is going to be used as a farm-to-table service with homemade goods available for sale by the applicant. They are seeking to construct one commercial building that would be used to sell produce and homemade goods. This is going to be treated as a home occupation because while the sales will not be made out of the resident structure itself, it will be out of a commercial structure on the property. This is the updated image of the property as drawn by the applicant. I did shade in the sections just with colors and have a legend there so that you can kind of properly understand like what relative uses would be. So that dark blue square in the center of the property would be the site of any and all commercial activity, and then residences, workshops, and sheds would be in purple. Gardens for the homemade goods are in the darker green, parking is in the gray, and then the septic arrangement is yet to be determined, and so that orange area is proposed underground septic, I believe. The home occupation is expected to operate 5 days a week, specifically Tuesday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that noise generated from the occupation would be marginal, mostly coming from animals and vehicles and people having conversations, which is very typical of the area. And given the large size of the property, I believe would be incidental and non-effective to surrounding landowners. There would be some odors such as compost and mulch and animal excrement, but besides that, it would not be anything atypical to the area. The home occupation does fit in the rural character. It is a homestead operated program that would be selling like homemade products and otherwise. And the approval of the conditional use permit would not adversely impact the public health, safety, or welfare, and would not generate a significant amount of traffic, noise, odors, et cetera. An important thing to just kind of consider in this property and why the staff is recommending postponement is that this property is currently not subdivided from the large tract. If it were approved today, it would be done in the current owner of the tract and not the applicant, and so that would result in them having to refile, which is why the staff will recommend approval, but it is at this time under a postponement until the close of sale, so it will be heard in November. Besides that, if the board does move to approve, given beyond the staff recommendation, the 4 conditions of approval are included, 3 of which are the typical ones for conditional use permits, and then a development plan is added as the 4th one that would be subject to review by the planning commission, since the area has no existing structures on it, and they're intending to add commercial, parking, and residential structures on the property. That's all I have from there.
Any questions for Elise?
Charlie, what's your recommendation on this?
Well, let me ask you a question, make sure I even understand. The reason for the postponement is because the applicant doesn't own the property yet, it's to be subdivided, and he's getting part of it?
I would believe
Is that correct?
Yes, we're supposed to hope to close this next week. We were waiting for all the paperwork coming back from planning and zoning to release it, so we can go ahead and go to closing with it.
Yeah. So is this then a condition of the sale?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose legally it would be if the owner joined in the application, but that may not be something everybody wants to do until it does sell. So, yeah, the applicant has to be either an owner of the property or have a contract to purchase it, something they can't not have, a bona fide interest in the property. So I do understand that. The only other question I've got, though, I don't know about the application, I just glanced through that, but the description in the agenda talks about farm to table. So this is all going to be agricultural related.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that I think is perfectly legitimate. I kind of, not panicked, but I kind of was taken aback when I see 5 buildings, commercial, all that kind of stuff. It's not exactly commercial as we envisioned it. But agricultural involves commerce. So,
yeah.
But this is agriculture. Then, yeah, that's appropriate. It would be the same kind of issues, though, since it's going to have more traffic and whatnot than just simply a farm generally would. So those questions are legitimate. But otherwise, no, this is appropriate. It does kind of make me wonder, though, about this seems to be far in excess of a home occupation. You know, I'm not, I don't really have my head around that. And maybe I'm just not remembering. But for example, you know, the Fisters, the Evans, and, you know, some other places like that, those are not home occupations. Those are agricultural uses. So I just wonder if this wouldn't be more just simply a development plan, but I haven't thought that through. I'm just, you know, I'm just sleep deprived, food deprived, blood deprived, you know, all that kind of stuff.
We do have a couple that are home occupations. One's right across from me, actually, Queens Lake. It's that way. That's a bed and breakfast, agricultural horse
Yeah,
farm.
but that doesn't, and of course, I'm not real clear about the scope of this, but that doesn't have anywhere near the scope, say, of an Evans or a Pfister or some of those.
Fair.
And in fact, those are, I mean, they're ag uses. I mean, they may play on the slides a little bit, but that's strictly, you know, just a sidelight. It is agricultural. Bed and breakfast, well, that's bed and breakfast, and there are conditional uses for that too. They haven't invited me to fish yet, so I got to find out about that part. But anyway, that's my question. But as far as, you know, the postponing it for a month, that might actually give us a chance to think about that and maybe adjust a little bit. But otherwise, unless, you know, they're bringing in, you know, just stuff, you know, but not agricultural stuff, well, then it's commercial and shouldn't be in an A1 zone. But if it's all ag-related, I mean, ag uses today are a whole lot wider a category than they were, say, when Janet started out.
I didn't say it, you did.
Anyway, but that's a question I've got. So we may be not using the right category, but in general, I think this is absolutely the right kind of activity. Just maybe not the right category, but we'll
The
think.
titling was meant to just clarify in two different distinct categories where you were like, this is specifically for arranging, buying, and selling out of the blue building, and then the other one's
Yeah, I
not.
mean, literally, it could simply be, it's an ag use and doesn't require anything
Yeah.
here, but it does require a development plan because there's going to be commercial activity.
Exactly.
Yeah, as opposed to, you know, a more traditional ag activity where, fine, you got a barn, you got a shed for tractors, you got a, you know, shed for something else. And we don't do anything with that, nor does anybody else. But because there's that commercial aspect to it,
Yes, sir.
development plan, I'm really quite sure. I'm not so sure, though, that it requires us. But as I said, I'm
not entirely sure what the precedent was, but there was a previous precedent within the last year to 18 months.
do you
where a
recall which
similar
application that was?
I cannot pull it off the top of my head right now, but we did refer to that. It was very similar in practice. It just had a pre-existing
if that's-
home and not
and I-
actually new buildings.
Sure. And I understand that, I don't recall it, but that's, well, once upon a time, I remembered everything.
Yeah.
Now, 1 in 1,000, I don't remember, so, you know, that's just the way that goes.
The best.
As I said, I don't think that's a problem. It's just, boy, this just seems like it's more agriculture than, you know, one of those other categories. But anyway, but otherwise, as far as title and all that, that's all quite
Yeah.
true. So that postponement of the month, I think, is perfectly fine. And then we can kind of think about this. Maybe I can
Yeah, we
read through
can
the
chat about
application.
it and kind of go into it.
For
further.
clarity's sake, can we ask who owns the farm currently?
It's under the Rebecca Cannon estate and otherwise, so it's that whole property is,
Okay, all right.
yeah, it's under Cannon.
My father-in-law just will.
I would believe so, yes. What is happening?
That should be in the Jimmy Lear estate, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got her
So they have 481 kind of in the bottom, and then there's another property, 485, and then it's whoever owns the track above them. Those are the current owners is looking into subdividing 2 pieces off of their
Yes.
large large square.
So we're gonna postpone?
Yeah, for clarity's sake, I've got to recuse myself from this discussion. One of the future buyers is a family member of mine, so that's why I asked who the owner of the farm was.
Thank you.
So I've got to recuse myself from this discussion. We can postpone it. I won't be here in November anyway, so good for me. But
Let's see, we're sitting here, though, at a minimum
I know,
quorum.
yep.
So you can't say anything about this one, because you're right, I think you're right, that would be a conflict. So once this is off the table.
Yes, then I can.
You know, we'll schedule it, I guess, although you really can't.
I won't be here in
Well,
November.
but that's not the
Yeah.
application, that's just mere scheduling,
Right.
so.
I won't be here
yeah.
in November anyway. so
Yeah,
it's-
and then
it's-
you won't
yeah.
be here, so that, yeah, okay.
Automatic recusal
Thank
from
you.
everything.
Right, I'm automatically recused from everything in November, so, all right. But I can't make a motion to postpone that.
No, well,
I can call for the
well,
motion.
that's right, you can't, I was gonna say, the chair can just do that, well, no, you probably shouldn't. So, from the discussion, it's clear we need a motion to continue, and so one of the other two is gonna make it and second it, and you're gonna stay the heck away from it.
Got it right.
How about that?
All right. So I'm going to recuse myself at this point from this discussion, and I'll let you two either make the motion or do whatever you want to do.
I can make it.
Okay.
I move that we continue conditional use permit application S 2021-36 for a farm-to-table business to the November meeting.
And I'll second.
I can't say.
You had us on, what is it, bated breath or something, waiting for you to say you'd second it.
All right, so the motion has been made, motion has been seconded. Charlie?
And I assume the vote would be 2, and you abstain?
Yes, I'm abstaining.
Yeah.
Usually there's more of us here. so This is not normally an issue, but
Surprised we only said 5 for the county.
yes. All right, so the vote 21-36 has been postponed until the November meeting. And I didn't mean to cut you short, I'm sorry.
Section level, Anderson, conditional use permit, I'm hearing not right, I guess, but is this just strictly agricultural, it's not, there's not houses or anything, it's just strictly agricultural change? Is that correct?
Charlie, again, I can't.
Yeah, yeah.
It's already agriculture.
Well, yes, but there's going to be scope-wise, I'm not clear, but it's going to be kind of like, you know, Pfister's or Evans, they're going to be selling farm products.
Gotcha.
So they're not going to be selling just commercial, you know, manufactured other stuff. They're going to be selling farm products, and these are farm products which are at least substantially from right there. Yeah. Okay, that's why it requires something additional, maybe just a development plan, maybe some kind of action. Okay?
All right. This vote has been postponed until the next meeting. Again, I'll offer, you're more than welcome to stay with us if you would like. If not, you're more than free
And
to
you know
leave.
how persuasive he is.
Yes. I still haven't got anybody to stay over.
I'll send an email to you and we can discuss further.
Okay. Postponed, where are we at? That threw me off. All right, there we go. Application -S 2021-37, Haddix Construction. Elise?
So this application, and actually the one following is nearly identical, just different sites. This one is at 100 Sabin Drive, specifically lot number 86, if you're referencing the development plan for the neighborhood. It is a variance to reduce the front yard setback from 50 feet to 30 feet along Sabin Drive in order to allow for a home construction. It is submitted by the Haddix Construction Group and is in the Agricultural 1 district. The acreage is approximately 10.5 acres, and staff does recommend approval of this variance application.
If I may butt in for just a second, I'm doing some work for Haddix. It has nothing to do with this or any of the stuff he brings before P&Z. It has, well, actually, it's collection, so I mean, it's nothing to do with land whatsoever. But I wanted to put that on the record.
Thanks, Charlie.
The property is similarly shaped to the state of West Virginia. That's how I kind of refer to it in the office. And Sabin Drive is the one that is traveling along the west property edge. Westwoods Drive, which is the location, is the address of the upcoming one, is along that south side. So just for reference, it would be off of that western border. This is the development plan as platted by the developer at the time of construction. The more accurate one is the one with that kind of jut out as opposed to the one that has that flat edge. The orange star does denote where the home would be placed in both instances. You can see topographical layout as well as in all drainage easements. The property is significantly has a lot of variety in topographical shifts, as do most of the properties in this area, requiring some type of accommodation or significant cost put on the applicant in order to put a home construction, given the range. Fortunately, with that kind of cleared area, it's hard to see the light gray lines of the topographical features, but they do bisect the property quite often, and they range pretty significantly. In the instance of variances, we look at KRS 100, section 243, and based off of kind of analysis and looking into the situation, the staff believes that the stipulation B on the strict application of provisions of the regulation would deprive the applicant of reasonable use of land or would create unnecessary hardship would be qualified in this instance due to the significant topographical changes. The variance would not alter the character of the general vicinity. Most of the properties in this area have some type of variance to their front yard setback in order to allow for a home to be built on what would be seen as the flattest portion of the properties, and it would not alter the character of any of that area, as well as it would not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. There's no drainage easements or any significant utility easement that close or that far from any roads, resulting in no threat to any of the surrounding utilities or otherwise. And so the staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit subject to, or I'm sorry, it should say variance. Subject to the variance given the 3 conditions above, again, adhering to any and all other zoning and subdivision regulations, complying with state, federal, and local regulations, and obtaining a building permit from the building inspection offices. And that is all I have.
Any questions for Elise? All right, is the applicant here? You guys are waiting till the last one, right? You're stuck at the last one, sorry.
He probably figured since they've done 50 or 60 in that subdivision, he probably could do
Yeah, it's
something more
kinda-
productive elsewhere.
Probably, it's normal. All right, any questions from the board at all? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Or I'll just make the motion. I make the motion to approve S-2021-37, taking into account the staff recommendations.
Second.
Rachel seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. There are none. Motion carries. All right, 38, which I have a feeling will be the exact same thing as 37.
Essentially the same thing. This is for the address of 204 Westwoods Drive, specifically not lot number 83 when looking at the plat records. This is for, again, the same variance from 50 feet in the front setback to 30 feet. It is in the agricultural district and is approximately 10-acre property. Staff does recommend approval of this. This is the property here. Technically, there is access from Westwoods on the east and west side, and the house would be built on the west side, specifically address 204. I cannot explain why this property has that one little inlet that hits on Westwoods. It was kind of, it's always been there. You can see it in the 2 reference plats there. And in light of that, the applicant will be building in that orange star. There is a parcel that was separated from the property in the mid-2000s, in the bottom picture, where it kind of cuts off the long arm of the property as it was platted and was transferred to the owner across the street. So given that, I reached out to the builder and said, hey, are you aware that this is the situation? He's like, yeah. He's like, I was not going to get close to it, but thank you for checking in. And I felt great about it. Again, we refer to KRS 100. Specifically, this instance would apply under section 243B in the strict application, depriving or creating unnecessary hardship on the applicant. As the area note has, and in the instance of the area on Sabin, it is a highly topographically variant area and would result in any, it would result in just a lot of significant changes that would make it difficult to build on it, and trying to find the flattest areas in the best interest of the applicant and the consultant or whomever is building on that property. Given this, the staff does recommend approval of the variance with the same conditions of approval as previously stated, adhering to all subdivision regulations and in the zoning ordinance, as well as applying or complying with federal, state, and local regulations and obtaining a building permit.
And I still haven't finished my work for X.
Got it. Any questions?
You'd have thought I'd finished by now, wouldn't you?
Any questions, Janet? All right. All right, if no questions, I'll make the motion to approve S 2021-38, taking into account staff recommendations. We'll need a second.
I'll second.
Janet seconds the motion. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Sorry, guys, you got stuck sitting here this entire meeting, so you were the only ones that took me up on it by default. All right. S-2021-40. Elise?
This is an application for a variance to the side yard setback from 50 feet to 10 feet to allow for a new residence to be placed at 5280 Muddy Ford Road. The acreage is approximately 1.8, and it is in the agricultural district. Staff does recommend approval of the application. This is an aerial shot of the property. As you can tell, it's incredibly narrow. It's 100 feet at the build line, and given the existing zoning regulations, a home would not be able and be suited for the property unless the property was expanded and absorbed into other properties or somehow gained more acreage to then put a home possibly farther back in an area that is not along that narrow strip. The kind of small, you can kind of see I have it circled in a later image is where the home would be placed. This is how the area was platted. You can see that at the time, the agricultural regulations were not at the density and setback requirements. There are all these very small cutouts, and based off this image, you can see that other properties have absorbed portions of the other kind of slices and slivers of this property off of Muddy Ford. Unfortunately, the lot in question is cut off a little bit, but that's okay. Circled in orange, which is, I realize now, is kind of a terrible color to circle it in, is the proposed location and the past location of the existing residence. It was a manufactured home placed on there that became dilapidated and was removed from the property. And the applicant is looking to put a similar style home on the same footprint, which would be about 10 feet from that south side yard.
That's actually incorrect.
Oh, sorry. What is the?
Sorry.
I can.
He's my father.
It's all right.
I'm going to help him out.
Can you state your name?
building-
Can you state your name, please?
My name is Aaron Henry. The building is actually, that she has circled, is actually an existing garage that was left on the property. The property, please don't go too crazy with my great drafting skills. It is 139 feet setback off the road. It is where the home was existing on the property. The front facing, I guess, right corner is 25 feet from the property line. The rear is 34.2. On the left-hand side, it is 59 feet from the property line, and it is 49.8
Do you
feet
mind if
in
I
the
take
rear.
this up to them?
And I can take all this off here.
Thank you.
Don't make fun of my drawing.
Trust me, I'm sure we've seen worse.
It's,
I don't know, this might be the worst we've seen.
Yeah, we'll
I don't know.
judge. All right.
We've seen some crazy ones. Given this adjustment, instead of it being 10 feet, it would instead be 25 feet at its narrowest. We'll take that into note and everything. This is I'm going to come up and show you guys the drawing. The front board is right here, and then it is.
Y'all know that's not the worst. I can
Yeah, that's actually
That's
pretty good.
actually pretty decent. All right.
we try to be as accurate with measurements
So he's only
as possible.
25 feet right here in the
that's
front. No, that's not that bad.
And it had an existing home in that location, and that's kind of how he obtained the property. It was too dilapidated to even think about replacing, was it?
Yeah, just tear it down and start over.
It's kind of the same thing that was already existing.
Okay.
Given that, it is actually a 15 more feet, and is less footage being required or requested to be changed from the setback. And I will make note of it in the staff report and in future in all documentation.
Okay.
With that, it's even easier to approve this, in my staff opinion. We do recommend a variance approval, given the conditions not being terribly significant and in the same footprint as the previous location, subject to the 3 conditions of approval shown on the board. Again, complying with all zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations, complying with any federal, state, and local regulations, and obtaining a building permit.
All right. Any
One
questions?
thing, Mr. Chairman. Did you say your first name is Aaron? Aaron?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any questions for Elise? Any questions for Mr. Hinton? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the variance application, number S-22140, variance to reduce the side yard setback from 50 to 25 feet, subject to the conditions put out by staff.
Okay, motion has been made. Need a second?
Second.
Janet seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Good news for you all, that's it. You don't have to stay any longer. Is there any other business that we need to entertain?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. I move that,
That's got to be some kind of record, that many applications. Thank you,
Good.
Janet. Keeping him moving.
I move that the meeting ends. Meeting is adjourned.